Mr. Crawford from Arkansas. We're glad you joined us. One of our new members we're proud to have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We're talking about the regulatory overreach of the federal government.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to be heard, Mr. Chairman. Under the Obama administration, the executive branch has hijacked the legislative process. The administration is riddled with unelected officials who are regulating the American people. The FCC, for example, the EPA, dozens of appointed czars have way too much to say. Congress needs to take back the reins on legislation, which is what we were elected to do. Appointed friends of the president, they don't know what the people need. That's why we have Congress. We were elected to know our districts and represent our district's needs. That's why I know how detrimental the EPA's regulations are to farmers, for example. Time and again, the EPA has produced regulations that go way beyond the intent of the federal law. For instance, the Clean Air Act was intended to keep our air safe and clean, but the EPA has turned it into something it's not, a means to regulate dust. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, I have actually risen in support of legislation to not fund their ability to regulate dust, and here I am again talking about this very same thing. I represent a heavily agricultural district in the great state of Arkansas. Any of the farmers in the 1st District will tell you this: food comes from the ground, and in the process of taking it out of the ground, we're going to stir up some dust. And now the EPA wants to regulate that dust. It's a natural byproduct of growing and harvesting crops and has been since man first put seeds in the ground. In order for these farmers to do their job and feed the millions of hungry mouths in our country, they should be allowed to do their job without being further poked and prodded by EPA bureaucrats. Under the new National Ambient Air Quality Standards, the total estimated cost to industry lies near $90 billion per year. A huge portion of this will be a direct hit to our farmers, putting many permanently out of business. Mr. Chairman, I'm certain that the Clean Air Act was not legislated to put farmers out of business. Another example of unelected officials missing the mark is EPA's fuel containment regulations. Once again, the EPA overstepping its bounds. They want to tell farmers how best to run their farms. Not only does EPA not trust farmers to run their operations well, the parameters they set for fuel containment end up costing the farmers tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the size of their farms. What the EPA needs to remember and understand is that farmers are smart people. It's in the best interest of them to invest in containment berms to ensure the land remains productive. Farmers don't want to spend money to clean up a fuel spill, which is why they already take the necessary safety measures. They shouldn't be forced to spend $10,000 for each containment facility when $1,000 would do the trick. Farmers know best how to protect their own land. We can't forget to protect the farmers. Folks, if we eat, we're involved in agriculture. There are over 300 million people to feed in America, and only 1 million farmers. In fact, out of that 1 million farmers, 250,000 account for 80% of the total food production. Now, I know here in Washington we can barely agree on anything, but I think there's one thing we can agree on, regardless of our political affiliation, age, race, or gender, and that is we like to eat. So why are we harming the people who feed us? We need to bring common sense back to Washington, quit letting the bureaucrats in Washington run a rice farm in northeast Arkansas, and let them do their jobs. The Clean Air Act and fuel containment are two solid reasons why the Congressional Relief Act is necessary, and I proudly stand with my colleagues in this effort to scale back rogue agencies such as the EPA in order to restore congressional intent to the regulations that are being produced. No longer should we let the tail wag the dog. Yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your comment.